Thank you for the introduction, and thanks to ACK for organizing this event. I'll just provide another introduction about the three participants. My colleague, the legendary gallerist Sadie Coles from London, who unfortunately can't be here, but who will be presenting a talk via video. My colleague Holly of the UCC in Beijing, also having most recently curated the emerging section of photography for the Paris Photo Fair, and myself, Jeffrey ROSEN, co-director of MISAKO and ROSEN Gallery in Tokyo, and co-president of the board of the New Art Dealers Alliance, a nonprofit organization based in New York. So I think we'll structure this by first watching Sadie's talk, then Holly will speak a bit, followed by myself, and with the remaining time we'll have a little bit of discussion, trying to put together some sense of what we mean when we talk about Asia's position within the global art world. Thanks.
So through this talk, we would like to see, where the Asian art world is now and the global art world. And then I've learned so much from you that, you've been, of course, running your gallery. And then also you've been participating, numerous international art fairs. Also, you have been recently conducting IGA. So today I'd like to, I hope we can actually see your perspective, through your activities, through the questions I prepared. So, okay. The first question from myself is, what kind of activities you're involved in these days? Could you speak, about including IGA, please?
Yes. Obviously, my name is Sadie Coles. I've been running my gallery in London for nearly 26 years, I think. And at the present time, I have 3 spaces in London. I've never opened in another city, which is maybe going against a trend or something, I don't know. But we do about 24 exhibitions a year across those 3 galleries. We represent 50 artists. We also do about 10 art fairs a year, at least 4 of those in the greater Asian region, and have been quite active in Asia for, I would say, about 10 years, maybe. I also, as well as kind of publishing books and helping manage the artists' careers, including their institutional shows as much as needed. I also have founded with a group of other leading gallerists the IGA, which is the International Gallery Alliance. And that word is actually crucial because it really is an alliance, and there are 260 galleries across the world who are joined together. And the main function of that alliance is to share strategies and information about the direction of the art market, the difficulties of operating in various global climates, and collaborating together to deal with problems or changing structures within the art world. It's actually been really, really exciting to talk so regularly to so many colleagues about the challenges they face and how they see the art world, really.
That's fantastic, Sadie. Yes, so I, always, I've been inspired, by you, as you've been, as you just, told us that, your gallery yourself has been, expanding, towards to Asia, but still you keep yourself or your gallery, itself, quite close, with your artists, which is really amazing. And then, obviously, like we are, getting into November, almost, end of 2022. And then you just, have participated, the first edition of Basel, Plus in Paris. And then you just, also finish Freeze London, which is, in your, home city. Could you tell us, what are, some of the most impressive, things, or like even, activities, you have seen recently or like this year in the art world?
Well, 2022 has been a very dynamic and to a certain extent very challenging year because we are all coming out of the pandemic. Some of us faster than others. In China, it's still much more difficult, and people are facing quarantine. But to a certain extent, the art world restarted in 2022 after this very strange 2-year period of new challenges for galleries, and many galleries pivoted to online sales or innovations around digital that, of course, have lasted and will continue in a very significant way. It also caused galleries to form organizations like IGA. There are many others in locations across the world, including South-South, and also Gallery Climate Coalition, which is another organization that I'm involved with, which is galleries getting together to figure out how to reduce their carbon footprint, which is a challenge. But that, so there were lots of activities that happened during the pandemic. But in 2022, we all were suddenly back to the mix of activities that we had pre-pandemic, which is a mixture of exhibitions, art fairs, this kind of museum shows opening, our artists needing us all over the world, and the return of intense travel. And to a certain extent, that has been fantastic. I mean, one of the highlights, I'm sure, for everybody has been the Venice Biennale. And actually, I just got back from there yesterday. I went back for a second look. It was, first of all, it's an outstanding exhibition, but everybody, I think, felt it was so great to be back looking at art and having face-to-face experiences of contemporary art, seeing new art for the first time in real life, and also sharing thoughts and reactions with audiences and colleagues and artists in terms of, and curators in terms of what everybody was seeing. So it's been wonderful, and the same to a certain extent, and the same is true of the art fairs, of course, which are fantastic hotbeds of dialogue, exchange, and learning, because you're just seeing so much art from around the world in one place. So all of that has been great, and we've all reconnected with our collectors, but it has come at a cost, because everybody got used to being at home, and some of the challenges of returning to work for galleries big and small have been complicated. People have had a chance to think about how they want their lives to be, about maybe resisting the relentless grind of the art market, and so there have been good and bad things about it. There were positives within the pandemic in terms of having time to read, to talk, to consider things at a slower pace, and I think that getting back to that much faster pace has had both pluses and minuses.
I really agree with you, because you just talked about, so much, global platforms, in the art world, including Venice, Basel art fairs, and then also, the few, like a South, IGA. So may I ask, what, your, point of view, like, in your opinion, what role should global platforms, play in this context? In the current art world after pandemic?
Well, I think art fairs do what they have always done before and after the pandemic, which is, they provide a way for you to introduce your program, the artists that you're working with, to a new audience. So even, for instance, if I'm doing Frieze Art Fair, I'm, the audience, especially people who are new to the art world or who are researching, becoming involved in looking at art, it's a very visible, easy entry point. They know they can go to Frieze Art Fair, that there will be booths and there will be Sadie Coles Gallery and Sadie Coles will be on it, and this is what she does. So that's an opportunity to meet and see lots of galleries. I can't remember how many there are, 240 galleries in the Frieze tent. From the very big ones like Gagosian and Hauser and Zwerner, to the middle market, which is probably me, and then to new emerging galleries from around the world. So it's, a very, very good opportunity. Having said that, of course, when I do Frieze, I do know a lot of the people who come, but when I do a fair in a new location, where I myself need to learn about the local art scene. I need to learn about local collector bases, local museums, and meet new people. So that's really what art fairs do so well. And of course, it's the function of the art fairs in Asia for me have been unparalleled in giving me tools to connect with a new audience. And I've chosen to not open in Hong Kong or Seoul or any of these locations, not because I think it's a bad idea, but just because I'm such a control freak. It would be too far for me to control what would be happening in my space. So the alternative for me to have a presence in different locations is to do art fairs, and we actively try and do some advanced visits so that we can build relationships before the art fair even happens. But they're really vital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. So, we just talked about, more about the global art scene in the beginning, and then you just talked about, Asia or local. So, I would like to ask, how you feel about art galleries in Asia or Japan. You just have done Frieze Seoul. And then also you've been participating, Shanghai art fairs. Also, in terms of Japan, you know a few galleries, from Japan, participated, London art fairs or Paris art fairs these last few weeks. Could you, talk about how, your view on them?
I think we're in a very exciting, dynamic period for galleries in Japan. There are more and more galleries. They're good, and some of those galleries have consistently had quite a high profile at the international fairs, like Takeishi or Takanagawa, Jeffrey Rosen, MISAKO and ROSEN. Some of these galleries are already very, very familiar to the international art community. But it's also wonderful to see younger galleries now going to the younger fairs like Kaiokiki or some of the other galleries that we are all watching. But of course, what is great about that, about a growing art scene in a particular location, is these galleries are giving a platform to their local artists. So that means that they will naturally feed into the whole international scene a new generation of young Japanese artists, and that I think is really, really very, very exciting. You know, it goes hand in hand with something that we have all observed at the big international fairs, the big Basel fairs, for instance, or these, which is the increasing presence of Japanese collectors. And that is also very, very exciting to see that the activity in Tokyo is being supported by an increasing group of local collectors and museums. And so I don't know. For me, it's a very, very positive moment for Japan.
I'm really happy to hear that.
I love the initiative of the Tokyo Art Week. Or is it Tokyo Art Week? Yeah, it seems like a very, very positive initiative.
Great. Well, like it's my final question, but I mean, what do you think, will be the position of Asian and Japanese art in the global art world in the future? Or like, as you just mentioned, you just said like, you see some potentials and the, Asia or Japanese, art scenes, but to enhance that, how do you think, what would be the key to enhance, further? Like would it be like something like, art fair or like a gallery or like something like, IGA? Would you talk about it a bit, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about collaboration and exchange. And you can see that happening in a very real way. For instance, we just talked about the Venice Biennale, and you can see how that there are many prominent, fantastic artists of a variety of ages, actually, from Asia in that international show. And the reason that they're in that show is because they are being seen by curators, museums, collectors, and galleries. And so there is this exchange going on. It's bearing real fruit, this exchange. And galleries like mine are interested in artists from the Asia region because we're seeing my booth at a fair is opposite an interesting gallery from Tokyo or from Shanghai or from Beijing or from Seoul or from Indonesia. It's actually it's happening in real time. So I will be sitting there on my booth thinking, who is that artist? I really like it, and then I want to learn more and possibly include it in a program, and I'm just one of the 200 galleries there. So that is going on all the time. The international curators who visit these fairs, often at the invitation of the fair, which is brilliant, do the same thing. So then you end up with an artist like T-San Hugh or Myra Lee or Kudo. In the Biennale or in major international museums and collections. So, if you look around, it is happening in real time, and I think that's very exciting. Colleagues, I also believe through organisations like IGA, like South, like Tokyo Art Week, people are talking to each other, collaborating with each other, offering to share artists or proposing shows to each other. Dialogue is happening, and there is real fruit coming from that dialogue. So I actually feel very that we're in a very positive time of collaboration.
Thank you, Sadie. Yes, I really, really believe, that's, so true. And then, thank you. Our conversation even, made ourselves in Japan, feel really positive. And then, yes, as you said, I think, dialogue is the key, and then I hope Jeffrey and then Holly, who will be physically, on site at ACK for the talk program, will continue, this dialogue, to talk about the global art scene and then the art world in Asia further.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Oh, thank you, Sadie. Yeah, Holly, please. Thanks.
So I'll pick up after Sadie's talk and kind of transition a little bit from the global art market a little bit into the perspective of museums, which is the industry that I'm coming from. So my name is Holly Roussel, and I'm a curator at the UCCA Center for Contemporary Art in Beijing. In my background, my curatorial practice, it really focuses on Chinese contemporary art history in the post-Mao era, looking at avant-garde exhibition histories. My master's is in museology, so the study of museums and collection histories and contemporary photography. So I'm really appreciative of Yukako Yamashita and the ACK team for the invitation to speak with you today. It's also my first trip to Japan, so I'm really happy and honored to be here. And thank you to Kiko for helping to coordinate this conference, and to Jeffrey. So we thought it might be useful with Jeffrey, this is a kind of big topic. How do we address it so that we would each present a little bit where we're coming from, because we can't speak for all of the global Asian art world. And so we can only speak about what we're doing and the perspective of our individual institutions in this kind of global ecosystem. To give a little background, I'm originally from the United States, but I've been living between China and Europe, specifically French-speaking Switzerland, the last 12 years. So 5 of those years in China and the other years in Switzerland. And I've been working for different museums during that time. So a long time at the Musée de l'Élysée, which is in Lausanne, Switzerland, one of the oldest institutions dedicated to photography. And later in collaboration as a consulting curator on exhibitions with the Folkwang, Musem in Marseille, the MMCA in Seoul in 2018, OCAT Shenzhen, Shanghai Center for Photography. So I'm really working in that institutional sphere. As Jeffrey mentioned, this year I had a really exciting opportunity. I curated the sector for emerging photography at Paris Photo, which is the largest global fair dedicated to photography. It's called Curiosa, and so I think we may talk a little bit about that later in our conversation, and the role of Asian artists kind of globally on the art market, specifically in Europe. So today I wanted to talk specifically, mostly though, about my work at the UCCA. So I had the honor to join the institution after collaborating with them as a guest curator in 2018. I joined during the pandemic. So I've actually been working entirely remotely since 2021. And during that time, the director, Phil Tenari, he brought on 2 different team members, so myself and Peter Ellie, who is based in New York. And we are both haven't been able to go back to Beijing since. So it's been a very interesting way to work in an institution, not being physically present with the team. To give a little background, if I could have the slide. Thank you. The UCCA, just in case you're not familiar with it, is a leading Chinese independent institution for contemporary art. So it was founded in 2007, just before the Olympics. And it's located in the heart of the 798 Art District. So that's the one on the far side, the red building. And we welcome, on average, in a non-pandemic year, around 1 million visitors. Since 2011, the director, Phil Tenari, has led the museum to a really significant expansion. So we've also opened 2 additional venues. So in the center, UCCA Edge, which opened in Shanghai in 2021, and UCCA Dune that opened in 2018, which is in Orania, which is on the coast in northeastern China. And so the UCCA is a center for contemporary art, so we're not a collecting institution, and I think that's significant. So we're really working in temporary exhibitions, usually between the 3 venues, around 10 to 15 shows per year. So our program, it focuses in kind of 3 acts. The core is really centering on local expertise, providing an international platform for Chinese artists and a very, very serious kind of museum institutional approach to their work. So we also have a commitment to emerging artists, through various different programs we've been doing over the last decade. And we have had pretty significant retrospective projects of mid-career and established Chinese artists from Xu Bing, Zheng Fangzhi, Xu Zhen, Gu Dexin, recently Liu Xiaodong, Huang Yongping, and others. Upcoming, we have a new project with Yang Fudong. That'll be next year. So as this kind of leading institution for contemporary art in China, the UCCA has also really dedicated itself to building links between China's art scene and the wider world. And so that may seem obvious now, but during the kind of last decade, it was really important to be able to bring exhibitions of major artists for the first time in China with these with a team that knew how to handle the artworks. Really, for the first time at such a large scale, we were able to have major solo shows, Sarah Morris, Rauschenberg, Kentridge, Terrence Simon, Kehinde Wiley, Mona Hatoum, and right before the pandemic, a Picasso show, which was very well frequented and pretty exciting for Beijing. So through these exhibitions and programs, the UCCA is really aiming to expose audiences to works that they wouldn't otherwise have the chance to see or encounter, and also collaborate with these leading international institutions, bringing Chinese contemporary art into the global context. And so I'll transition from talking then about what the museum does, but I wanted to give you a bit of background. So my work is really rooted in that last part of our mission. How do we bring Chinese contemporary art into the global context? And that was the reason, and that was really the root of why I was so excited to join this team. We really discussed since the pandemic, what does it mean that people can no longer travel? What does it mean that we're making these fantastic exhibitions and retrospectives of Chinese artists in a very sophisticated museum context that people can't go to see? And how can we kind of collaborate still with the international art world? And so how do we reinvent those working methods? And so I think that I'm going to totally agree with what Sadie was saying. The root of that is collaboration. And so I'd like to, talk a little bit about one project that I'm currently working on and how that kind of fits into this type of a global collaboration. Since the UCCA was founded, we have been collaborating internationally with publishers, art institutions. We've published more than 60 books. And so this has always been a significant part of our program. But since 2018, there was a big restructuring. And we really had a push to develop more research projects and possibly work with other institutions beyond one single discipline. So these kind of cross-cultural and cross-disciplinary collaborations has become really important. And so as we're planning in projects for the upcoming years, there's kind of the local audience is incredibly significant for us. And however, with the pandemic, we've also started to think, how do we begin more significantly, perhaps than before, to collaborate with this global audience? And so this upcoming April, one project that is going to kind of travel globally is a project that I'm working on, which is called Slideshow. And it looks at the role of projected photography in the history and the development of Chinese contemporary art. And I think it's both interesting kind of in its concept, but also for the context of this conversation as an exhibition that we're planning to tour and has been really conceived from the beginning in that way. I'm just gonna give you some pictures. So in the 1980s, during the Deng Xiaoping era and its aftermath, I guess that's a more appropriate slide. So art, historical texts, and images from beyond Chinese borders, that's what I was looking for, began to filter into the country, and they introduced new cultural references. And so the slide was portable, reproducible, and it was central to this expanding landscape of exchange. Simultaneously, the export of artworks of Chinese artists into the global market means that they entered the wider contemporary art discourse for the first time. So this is a view from the Magicien de la Terre exhibition that happened at the Centre Pompidou. So slideshow presents this kind of unique perspective on the period of Chinese art history by exploring the applications of projected photography from the Cultural Revolution. So if I go back a little bit, here we have some slides offset printed color slides from the 1960s. And here we have some autochromes, 1950s. So from the Cultural Revolution into the 2010s, really looking at the impulse of the light image. And so the show is organized around the key characteristics of the slide medium. So its transparency, its refraction, aiming to kind of, and its transmission, aiming to guide the viewer through this new genealogy of the medium in the post-Mao context. So we're quite excited. We'll be reproducing a number of artworks kind of from the early days and the origins of media art in China, which will be the first time that the younger audience will have seen these as well. So I wanted to just focus, I'm going to jump back on, sorry, I'm a little out of order, to one image that's really significant, I think, for this exhibition, and just talk about it, and then I'll pass it over to Jeffrey. So this is a photograph from Lin Jiahua's 1988 performance. So he was a member of the Xiamen Dada group, an artist collective that was active in the 1980s from Xiamen, who targeted kind of institutional framework of art. And the event was called To Enter into Art History, slideshow activity. And so in the stills, we capture Lin Jiahua, who was having a slideshow of Western art history projected on his body. And it kind of, he starts to become a hybrid and a single plane, and we can't really separate him from these images. And I think it's interesting because he's physically entering into this light of the projection, and he's also entering into art history. And in this context of the moment, if we look back at it today, this work was questioning, okay, the relationship between the body and Chinese artists and Western art historical masterpieces. But I think more significantly, and what's important in the exhibition I want to bring up, is the position that was felt by Chinese artists as China was opening up to the world. So he organized this performance consequently at the same time with the Huangshan Conference in 1988. And very kind of simply, that conference was a major event that was happening in Hangzhou, near Hangzhou, which was the kind of definition. It was a moment where we were defining the 85 new wave in a way, and gathering to select the artists that would participate in the 1989 China Avant-Garde exhibition. And so Lin Jiahua seems to be asking us kind of, can Chinese art even really enter into art history that's been defined by this Western canon? And do we want to try? And do we, I think it's quite a provocative performance, especially at the moment that it was taking place. And so right at this moment when Chinese artists and critics are attempting to write a history of the development of Chinese art post-Mao and after the Cultural Revolution, and they're tying this always to the history of modern art in the West. So it's a really quite an exciting moment. So many of the histories of slides, to tie this into this kind of global question, slides and projection in contemporary art, these kind of historical surveys have remained knowingly, unknowingly very Western-centric. Of course, Kodak is in North America, so it's natural that we're going to really focus on that part of the world when we're talking about the history of slides. But narratives have been pretty excluded from other areas of the world. And so for me, that was kind of the the initial impulse to look at this. I wondered, okay, I've seen all of these exhibitions about the history of slides and the role of projection, and there's this important impulse, this of light. But what was happening in China? And so I think that's kind of also the place for the institution, and that's a place that we can navigate. In the global contemporary art arena and in fairs like ACK, the works are meeting each other regularly, as Sadie was saying, across the alleys from one another. Galleries are even collaborating on the booths here, but I think it's also important that the histories are meeting in the museum context, and that as an institution with a specific local knowledge that we can kind of bring up these subjects that maybe haven't been talked about before, and that we can try to contextualize them in a way and collaborate internationally so that it can later on maybe be the fruit of someone else's research, or maybe when future researchers are going to talk about projection in contemporary art, they're also going to think, oh, we can also include what was happening in China in this context. So in order to do that, we're co-producing this exhibition with a specialized institution in France, so the Institut pour la Photographie in Lille. And that was an intentional decision. The director there is specialized in the history of slides, more in the Western context. And so we're going to be collaborating so that we can bring this to France, and we'll adapt the exhibition. So the show in Beijing will be slightly different from the show in France in order to really create an interesting dialogue. And I think that that's kind of a new place that we're looking at in museums, is also to think we build an exhibition for one local audience or one particular audience, and then we may very well need to adapt that and evolve the show. And I think that that's a really interesting possibility to a new audience. So I've always hoped that, and I think this is something we all share at the UCCA, that contemporary Chinese art will stand on the world stage on its own. And that these types of collaborations, I think bringing together people across the world from different teams with different expertise is one kind of very interesting way and meaningful way that we can do this. So I guess I will then pass it over to Jeffrey. Thank you.
Thanks. I need the slide. Hi. So I'll just speak a little bit about my perspective as a gallerist based in Tokyo. A primary focus of our gallery is the development of a commercially viable alternative to a profit-driven approach towards art dealing, a culture-forward approach which sees the financial side of our practice as a means to an end, the advancement of culture, rather than an end or goal in and of itself. In this sense, our gallery essentially functions as a nonprofit in arguably wolf's clothing. One clear strategy that we've developed in support of this effort is to focus on nurturing a next generation of artist-run rather than traditional commercial gallery spaces. And I'd like to call everyone's attention who's here to the artist-run space 4649, Yoroshiku, who's participating in the fair together with young New York gallery King's Leap, as well as call your attention to an official ACK satellite event, the Artist Running Festival, which is organized by the artist Cobra of XYZ Collective. That's an off-site event and on view at the space VU for the duration of the fair. The strategy of supporting artist-run spaces has affected our own growth as a gallery. Rather than expanding in terms of staff, we in essence remain a two-person family-run business. Three-person family-run business if you include our 6-year-old Instagram star and weekend gallery staff daughter, some of who you may know, Yoko. I begin with this description of our own practice and strategy, as I believe that our home base of Japan, and specifically Tokyo, is perfectly suited towards this manner of art dealing, one which may sound idealistic, yet is actually quite practical, even from a business perspective, given our peripheral position within a global art economy. We're peripheral in terms of geography. But also because of our financial limitations, the absence of a robust local art market or pre-existing infrastructure for the development of a local art market. We're not well situated to compete. Rather, I suggest that we need to collaborate, to work together with similarly situated colleagues in an effort not to grow, but first to survive, and to provide mutual support within a global environment hostile towards prioritization of culture. I'll just talk quickly about 3 alternative initiatives that we've been a part of or remain involved in. So the first is Onsen Confidential. Onsen Confidential was a hybrid citywide gallery share and natural hot spring retreat conference. The project was meant to bring together like-minded gallerists in a spirit of collaboration and cooperation, and to provide a friendly introduction to the unique context of the contemporary art world of Tokyo. This particular project was inspired by presidents such as the Milwaukee International, Paramount Ranch in Los Angeles, Kondo throughout the world, Okie Dokie in Dusseldorf and Cologne, Friend of a Friend in Warsaw, villa projects organized by Raster Gallery, such as the Villa Warsaw, Villa Reykjavik, Villa Toronto, and Villa Tokyo, nonprofit initiatives such as NADA, the New Art Dealers Alliance, and Paris International, and gallery organizations such as Kadan, the Contemporary Art Dealers Association Nippon, and the IGA that Sadie spoke about, the International Galleries Alliance. So all of that is just a very long-winded way of saying that we brought together a number of really interesting galleries, both from within and in Japan and from abroad. We went to Atami to talk, bathe, eat, and drink together, and then to Tokyo to present exhibitions together with and in the spaces of Japanese host galleries. Much in the spirit of ACK, the entire project was geared towards an opening up on many levels through collaboration. And here are just some silly slides from our Onsen conference. Pictured here is our friend Forrest Nash, who started the online contemporary art journal, Contemporary Art Daily. And if you're not familiar with that, I suggest you check it out. Also, the more comprehensive online archive of contemporary art exhibitions, Contemporary Art Library. Culture Shock. This is gallerists from out the world enjoying each other's company at a dinner at the hot spring. And here are just a few installation shots from collaborative exhibitions that were part of the project. This is from the space of shared by XYZ Collective and 4649. They were hosting the alternative space Kim from Riga, Latvia. Plug, this is MISAKO and ROSEN Gallery. We were collaborating with Lambda, a gallery based in Pristina in Kosovo, and 47 Canal, a gallery based in New York. Here's the happy poster for our Onsen Confidential project. Okay, so next, I'll speak just a bit about another project we are working on, Maison des Rendezvous. Maison des Rendezvous is a Brussels-based space shared by 3 international galleries. Previously seen Lambda from Pristina, MISAKO and ROSEN, and Parkview Paul Soto, Los Angeles. Akin to the novel from which our space draws its name, Maison des Rendezvous features a shifting cast of characters drawn from the programs and networks of the participating galleries. This project is less a pop-up than a committed initiative that seeks to create a dialogue of exchange and connection. Maison des Rendezvous intends to be a synthetic crossroads, a semi-open source program, and modest node amongst the vibrant artscape of Brussels, which is another long-winded way of saying something. Basically, Maison des Rendezvous consists of 3 galleries, 4 galleries when we started, all sharing one exhibition space together in Belgium. And through this project, we learned together how far we can push collaboration and how working together collaboratively and cooperatively might help us grow via mutual support. And here are some images of, a few images of exhibitions in the Maison des Rendezvous space. the artist Nora Turato, Margaret Lee, an artist who founded the exhibition space 47 Canal in New York, Josh Brand on the wall, who we're showing here at the fair, and a Japanese artist, Miho Dohi, who shows with our colleagues Hagiwara Projects, who are also participating in the fair. And the last thing I'll read off my computer is a description of NADA, the New Art Dealers Alliance, which somehow I found myself in the position of a co-president of. Founded in 2002, the New Art Dealers Alliance is a non-for-profit collective of professionals working with contemporary art. The mission of the organization is to create an open flow of information, support, and collaboration within our field, and to develop a stronger sense of community among our constituency. We believe that an adversarial approach to exhibiting and selling art has run its course, and that change can be achieved through fostering constructive thought and dialogue between various points in the art industry, from large galleries to small spaces, nonprofit and commercial alike. Through support and encouragement, we facilitate strong and meaningful relationships between our members, working with new contemporary art and emerging art, while enhancing the public's interaction with contemporary art. Our international group of members includes both galleries, including nonprofit spaces, and individuals, art professionals, independent curators, and established gallery directors. We believe in a spirit of friendly competition and the power of working collectively to gain access to resources and to provide services to artists and the public that we could not do alone as individuals. And there's not much to see in these slides, so we can just go ahead and skip them. So I've just described 3 initiatives that we take part in, which are meant to allow us to function on an international platform as a gallery based in Japan. It's particular maybe to our generation, having worked for more established contemporary Japanese galleries, myself and my partner in the gallery, MISAKO, for 15 years prior to opening our own space. Somehow now, maybe with your help as an audience, if you have any questions, we can try and tie together these three brief discussions about our own particular positions, working to support art within the context of Asia, whatever Asia might mean. Well, Holly and I had a chance to talk a bit. We had a chance to talk a bit prior to today, and one word that came up as a possible prompt for discussion was emergent, or emergence, or emerging. And when Holly mentioned this, I got really excited because one core mission that we have as a gallery in support of culture forward initiatives is one consequence of this position is that we sort of have the benefit of eternal youth or perpetual emergence. Being a gallery based in Japan seems to place us in a position of perpetual emergence. I can give a specific example of a Japanese artist whom you may be familiar with, Kaoru Arima, who's now in his late 50s and has reinvented himself as a painter, and whose work you'll see written about as if he were in his early 20s. Or I could point to another artist whom we work with, Shimon Minamikawa, whose work you can see at MTK exhibition space here in Kyoto, who is a relatively established artist within Japan, but is again kind of thought about and exhibited and considered in the context of emerging art. In some sense, I think this is quite a benefit that we're always emerging. Obviously, it has its disadvantages from a financial perspective, and I just with that, based on your experience working in support of not only but artists from China, what this word means to you and how it relates to your practice as a curator.
Yeah, it was definitely a topic that Jeffrey and I, we both kind of tilted on, because living between, I mean, you're based in Japan, I'm really kind of based in two places, and living between those two places, it became really obvious to me when I specifically started curating exhibitions that artists I considered very well established in China were completely unknown outside of China, maybe to 2 or 3 people, and that was about it, specialists. And so it was kind of about how do you continue to have this perspective where you're able to recontextualize and say, okay, it's not about constantly discovering a new person. That's not my role. It's actually to make sure that we're having these kind of longer term collaborations where we're establishing a position of an artist. And so I guess curatorially, I've decided to use this question of emergence and how these artists who are very well established locally and nationally, but rather unknown. And I think that's often maybe because I work a lot in photography, maybe because it's rather young. I think also there's a significant language barrier and maybe a certain bias when we're looking at Chinese photography based on how the market developed. But I think that there is definitely the necessity to kind of move away from these let's discover Chinese photography group projects and to focus more on individual artists and show what they brought to the medium. And so that's how I've been trying to kind of position my curatorial practice to give a bigger space to them. And then the other kind of interesting opportunity recently was with Paris Photo. There was this emerging artist sector, and I was allowed to invite 16 artists to make a selection of 16 artists brought by 16 galleries to present solo shows in the fair. So it's a significant opportunity. It gets a lot of press. And so I thought, okay, there's a lot of responsibility also that comes with that. Which galleries am I going to work with? Which artists? And I looked back at the previous, it's 5 years this initiative exists. And in those 5 years, there had never been a Chinese artist. And so I thought, wow, that's pretty shocking, actually. So I started asking why. And I think one thing that maybe is significant in the context we're talking about is cost. So galleries that are coming from China that are trying to present work in Paris, their costs are much more significant than the smaller gallery in Belgium that's driving a van across the border with the works in the back. You know, it's really practical, but you know, what is the presence of, I can't speak for the presence of Japan, but I can speak for the presence of China, is significantly related to price, to shipping. And so I think that's kind of something to take into consideration when we talk about the role of Asia in these global marketplaces, is also like, what needs to be put in for you to be able to survive in that context? Because Europe is very close and it's quite easy to navigate. You know, they're all different countries, but very, very quickly connected by train or by car. And so that was something I noticed, but positively was able to bring three galleries from China for the first time. And those 3 artists for me were not really emerging, but they were pretty much unknown to the public in Paris. And so that was really exciting. And we had like a very meaningful tours and met with institutions. And I think that that's kind of the best part about what we can do is in some ways kind of bridge that language gap and also make a meaningful selection of 3 individuals who have more than a decade, sometimes 2 decades of work in photography that's very well established, and give them like a very meaningful platform to meet with the kind of French ecosystem, I guess you could say.
Did you feel coming from an institutional background, that the art fair provided a friendly platform or a useful platform for introducing the work?
So from an institutional background, it's kind of interesting to work in the art market context. And it was the first time that I had curated something for an art fair. But we're all connected at the end of the day. And I think that particularly with smaller galleries, but also the larger ones, we're in this to support artists and to make sure their work gets out there. And so I felt like it was actually a very exciting opportunity to be able to say to collectors, these are 16 artists that I think have, you know, they've been picked up and watched by people working in institutions. I think that they have a really meaningful practice. I think you should take a look at them, which is maybe not the same perspective perhaps that a gallery would have when they bring their artist work. You know, I had conversations where some of the galleries I invited, they said, but I may not sell that. And so I don't know if I can bring that artist. And that was very interesting for me from an institutional perspective to say, what's getting on the booth in the art fair? And when you have a solo show, what are the necessities actually for sales in order to make it viable? Because there is that financial aspect behind.
Yep. I mean, we have a very short amount of time left. Just in case anyone in the audience might happen to have a question, we're both happy to field it. Maybe not. Okay, well, I think we can wrap it up. I mean, it's a really difficult and possibly vague topic to try and tackle. Asia specific with position within a global art context when in our own individual places within Asia that are highly particular, we're trying to figure out where we are and what we're doing. But hopefully through these kind of conversations and events like ACK, where we're working collaboratively with each other, we're working to advance our understanding slowly but surely. So thanks again to the organizers for setting this up, for organizing the fair, and thanks to the audience for sitting through it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.